The champagne flute trembled in my hand as I stood at the edge of the ballroom, watching crystal chandeliers cast fractured light across marble floors. Everything here cost more than I'd earn in a lifetime. The silk drapes pooling like liquid gold, the orchestra tucked into an alcove playing something classical I couldn't name, the guests draped in diamonds that caught the light with every calculated movement. I didn't belong here. My reflection in the towering windows confirmed it. A waitress in a borrowed black dress, hair pulled back too severely, lipstick already fading from nervous biting. I'd been serving champagne at the Regent Hotel for 6 months, invisible to people like these. That's what poverty does. It makes you a ghost, moving through spaces you're never truly meant to occupy. The tray grew heavier in my aching arms. My feet screamed inside cheap heels 2 sizes too small, borrowed from my roommate who'd promised this catering gig would pay double. I needed double. I needed triple. The eviction notice taped to my apartment door gave me 2 weeks, and my mother's medical bills kept piling up in envelopes I couldn't bear to open. More champagne. A woman dripping in emeralds snapped her fingers without looking at me. I moved forward, becoming shadow again, refilling her glass while she continued her conversation as if I didn't exist. The bubbles rose and popped, and I caught the scent. Expensive. Imported. Probably worth more per bottle than my monthly rent. That's when I felt it. The shift in the room's atmosphere, subtle as a drop in temperature. Conversations didn't stop exactly, but they softened. Heads turned toward the entrance with a mixture of curiosity and something else. Wariness, maybe. Or respect, born from fear. I glanced up despite myself. He stood in the doorway flanked by 2 men in dark suits who scanned the room with the mechanical precision of security cameras. But I barely registered them. My eyes locked on the man between them, and something in my chest constricted. He was young, couldn't be more than 30, but carried himself with the authority of someone who'd never been told no. Tailored black suit that probably cost more than my car, if I'd owned a car. Dark hair swept back, sharp jawline, and eyes that... God, even from across the room, those eyes seemed to catalog everything. Every exit, every person, every potential threat. The dangerous kind of handsome, the kind that came with warning labels. He moved into the room like he owned it. Maybe he did. And the crowd parted automatically. No one touched him. No one even came close. His guards maintained a perimeter, hands clasped in front of them, earpieces barely visible. I should have looked away, should have returned to my corner, to my invisibility. Instead, I stood frozen, tray balanced on my hip, watching him navigate the space with predatory grace. He spoke to a silver-haired man who seemed nervous despite his expensive suit, nodded to a woman who blushed and looked away, accepted a handshake that looked more like a business transaction than a greeting. Then his gaze swept the room and landed on me. The impact was physical. Those dark eyes locked onto mine across the expanse of marble and wealth, and for a heartbeat, the noise faded. The orchestra, the conversation, the clinking of crystal, all of it dissolved into the roar of my own pulse. I looked away first, heat flooding my cheeks. Stupid. So stupid to stare at someone like that. Someone so clearly out of my atmosphere. I ducked my head, gripping my tray tighter, and moved toward the kitchen doors. The service corridor was blessedly cool and quiet. I pressed my back against the wall, catching my breath like I'd run a marathon. My hands were shaking. Get it together, Elena, I whispered to myself. He's just a man. A rich, powerful, probably dangerous man, but still just a man. Who was I kidding? I pushed off the wall and returned to my station by the bar, where Antonio, the head server, was arranging fresh trays. You okay? He asked, eyebrow raised. You look like you've seen a ghost. Who is he? The question escaped before I could stop it. The man who just arrived, with the guards. Antonio's expression shifted, a flicker of something between respect and fear. He leaned closer, voice dropping. Dante Moretti. Don't stare at him. Don't talk to him. And for God's sake, don't get in his way. What does he do? Nothing legal. Antonio pressed a fresh tray into my hands. And nothing you want to know about. Now go. Table 7 needs refills, but I couldn't help glancing back toward the ballroom as I pushed through the doors. Dante Moretti stood near the far window, speaking quietly into a phone, while one guard kept watch, and the other intercepted anyone who tried to approach. Even from here, I could see the deference in people's postures, the way they gave him space. This was his world. Power and danger wrapped in expensive fabric. And I was just passing through it, temporary and forgettable. I worked the next hour in my practiced invisibility, weaving between guests, replacing empty glasses, collecting abandoned plates. My feet had gone numb, which was almost a blessing. The kitchen staff was already whispering about tips, about which tables were generous and which treated them like furniture. I didn't expect tips. People like these didn't see people like me. "Miss!" The voice came from behind me, low and smooth, with an accent I couldn't quite place. Italian, maybe. I turned, expecting another guest demanding something. Instead, I found myself face to face with one of Dante Moretti's guards. Up close, he was even more intimidating, built like he could break me in half without effort, scar running through his left eyebrow, expression completely neutral. "Mr. Moretti requests a fresh scotch. Neat. Macallan 25 if available." My mouth went dry. Yes, of course. I hurried to the bar, relaying the request to the bartender who whistled low. "That's a $200 pour. Apparently he can afford it." The crystal tumbler felt absurdly heavy as I carried it on a small tray, weaving through the crowd toward where I'd last seen him. My heart hammered against my ribs. This was ridiculous. I was delivering a drink, not performing surgery. But when I found him near the terrace doors, alone for a moment, his guards stationed a respectful distance away, my breath caught again. He stood with his back partially to me, phone pressed to his ear, speaking rapid Italian. The terrace doors were open, letting in the cool April breeze that carried the scent of night-blooming jasmine. His profile was sharper than I'd realized, all angles and shadows, beautiful in a harsh, unforgiving way. I approached carefully, tray extended. "Your scotch, sir." He ended his call without goodbye, turning to face me fully. Up close, he was devastating. Dark eyes that seemed to see through skin to bone, full lips that had probably never smiled without calculation, and that presence, that overwhelming sense of controlled danger. "Thank you." He took the glass, fingers brushing mine for the briefest second. The contact sent electricity up my arm. I pulled back too quickly, nearly dropping the tray. His lips quirked. Barely. "Careful." "Sorry, I swallowed hard. "Is there anything else you need?" Those eyes studied me with an intensity that made me want to squirm, or run, or maybe step closer. I couldn't tell. "Your name?" It wasn't a question. "Elena." My voice came out smaller than I intended. "Elena Russo." "Elena." He repeated it like he was testing how it felt in his mouth. Then he raised the glass slightly. "This is excellent scotch, Elena. Thank you." I nodded, unable to form words, and turned to leave. "Elena." I froze, turned back. He was watching me with an expression I couldn't read. "Be careful walking home tonight. This neighborhood isn't as safe as it looks." Before I could respond, one of his guards appeared at his elbow, murmuring something urgent. Dante's expression hardened, all traces of whatever softness I'd imagined vanishing. He nodded once, set down the untouched scotch, and strode toward the exit with his security flanking him. I stood there, tray clutched to my chest, watching him disappear through the grand doors. The rest of the night passed in a blur. I served drinks, cleared plates, smiled until my face hurt. But my mind kept circling back to those few seconds on the terrace. The way he'd said my name, the warning about walking home. Had he been threatening me? Protecting me? Both? By the time the last guest departed and the cleaning crew arrived, it was past midnight. Antonio distributed tips. Mine was pathetically small, barely enough to cover bus fare for the week, and sent us home. The April night had turned cold. I wrapped my thin cardigan tighter as I walked toward the bus stop 6 blocks away, heels clicking against pavement, every shadow suddenly suspicious. Dante's warning echoed in my head. This neighborhood isn't as safe as it looks. I walked faster. The street was empty, lined with expensive cars and darkened storefronts. My breath fogged in the air. The bus stop ahead glowed weakly under a flickering streetlight. Almost there. Then I heard the footsteps behind me. My spine stiffened. I didn't turn around, just walked faster, heart rate spiking. The footsteps matched my pace, getting closer. Panic clawed up my throat. I reached into my purse for my phone, fingers shaking. "Hey, sweetheart." The voice was slurred, aggressive. I glanced back to see two men in wrinkled suits, probably from the party, drunk and looking for entertainment they had no right to. I broke into a run. They laughed, chased. My cheap heels weren't made for running. One caught on a crack in the sidewalk, and I went down hard, knees slamming into concrete. Pain exploded up my legs. My purse spilled across the pavement. Phone, lipstick, the pathetic fold of bills from tonight's tips. Not so fast. Hands grabbed my arms, hauling me up. I screamed, twisting, kicking. One of them laughed, breath reeking of alcohol. The other grabbed my face, fingers digging into my jaw. "Let me go!" I clawed at his wrist. "We just want to have some fun." The headlights appeared suddenly, blinding. A black SUV screeched to a stop 10 feet away, doors flying open before it fully halted. Everything happened fast. Men in dark suits emerged. 4, maybe 5, moving with military precision. One grabbed the man holding me and slammed him against the nearest wall, hard enough that I heard the impact. The other drunk raised his hands, stumbling backward, stammering apologies. Then Dante Moretti stepped out of the SUV. The streetlight caught his face, all sharp shadows and cold fury. He surveyed the scene with those calculating eyes, lingering on my torn stockings, my bleeding knees, the trembling mess I'd become. "Get them out of my sight," he said quietly. His guards dragged the two men toward a different vehicle. One was crying. The other kept trying to explain, words tumbling over each other in desperate justification. Dante ignored them. He walked toward me slowly, hands in his pockets, expression unreadable. I tried to stand, wincing at the pain shooting through my legs. Failed, sat back down on the curb, humiliation burning hotter than fear. He crouched in front of me, close enough that I could smell his cologne, expensive, with notes of cedar and something darker. His eyes scanned my face, my torn dress, my scraped knees. "You're hurt." "I'm fine." A lie. I was shaking so hard my teeth chattered. "You're not fine." He reached out slowly, fingers brushing my chin, tilting my face toward the light. Checking for injuries, I realized. His touch was surprisingly gentle. "Did they—" "No. You stopped them before." I couldn't finish. His jaw tightened. He stood, offering his hand. "Come on." I stared at that outstretched hand like it might burn me. "I can take the bus. The bus doesn't come for another 40 minutes. You're bleeding, in shock, and those men might have friends." His voice left no room for argument. "Get in the car, Elena." The way he said my name, like he'd been thinking about it since the party, sent a shiver down my spine that had nothing to do with cold. Against every instinct screaming that getting into a car with a man like Dante Moretti was dangerous, I took his hand. His fingers closed around mine, strong and warm, and he pulled me to my feet with effortless strength. I stumbled, pain shooting through my knee, and his other hand caught my waist, steadying me. For a heartbeat, we stood too close. I could feel the heat of him through my thin dress, see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes, count the faint freckles across his nose that somehow made him more human. Then he guided me toward the SUV, hand never leaving my back. One of his guards opened the door. The interior was all black leather and tinted windows. Dante helped me inside, following, settling into the seat beside me with that same predatory grace. The door closed, sealing us in. "Where do you live?" he asked. I gave him my address, the rundown apartment building in a neighborhood that made this one look like paradise. If he judged, it didn't show on his face. He relayed the information to the driver in Italian, and we pulled away from the curb. Silence filled the space between us. I pressed against the door, hyper-aware of every inch separating us. My heart wouldn't stop racing, whether from the attack or his proximity. I couldn't tell anymore. "Thank you," I whispered finally, "for stopping them." He glanced at me, expression inscrutable. "You shouldn't have been walking alone. I can't afford a car." "I know." Something about the way he said it, like he'd already looked into me, already knew things about my life I hadn't told him, made my skin prickle. How? I asked before I could stop myself. The corner of his mouth lifted, not quite a smile. I make it my business to know things. We drove through the city in silence after that, the partition between us and the driver raised. I watched the expensive neighborhoods give way to middle-class areas, then to the struggling blocks where people like me scraped by. My building came into view, crumbling brick, flickering neon sign, bars on the ground floor windows. Shame burned through me. He'd probably never set foot in a place like this. Never had to. The SUV stopped out front. "Thank you for the ride," I said, reaching for the door handle. His hand caught my wrist, gentle but firm. "Wait." I froze. He pulled something from his jacket, a business card, heavy stock, embossed lettering, held it out to me. "If anyone bothers you again, call that number." I took the card with trembling fingers. Just a phone number. No name, no title. "Why are you helping me?" He studied me for a long moment, those dark eyes searching for something in my face. When he spoke, his voice was softer than before, almost dangerous in its gentleness. "Because when I told you to be careful tonight, I meant it." He released my wrist slowly, fingers trailing against my pulse point. "And because I don't like seeing what's mine damaged." The possessiveness in that statement should have terrified me, should have sent me running. Instead, it ignited something low in my stomach that I absolutely could not afford to feel. "I'm not yours," I whispered. His smile was sharp enough to cut. "Not yet." I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Dante Moretti crouched in front of me on that sidewalk, the streetlight carving shadows across his face. Felt his fingers on my wrist, heard his voice saying those words that shouldn't have thrilled me, but did. Not yet. Like my belonging to him was inevitable. A foregone conclusion. I sat at my kitchen table as dawn broke through my threadbare curtains, the business card between my fingers. Heavy cardstock, expensive. Just 10 digits embossed in black ink, nothing else, no name, no company, no explanation. My knees were bandaged now, antibiotic ointment stinging beneath the gauze. My dress hung over the bathroom door, torn and ruined. I'd never be able to afford another one. The eviction notice still taunted me from the counter. 12 days left. I made coffee in my ancient percolator, the bitter smell filling my cramped studio apartment. Through the thin walls I could hear Mrs. Chen's television, Rodriguez's baby crying, the couple upstairs arguing in rapid Spanish, the sounds of poverty, of too many people crammed into too little space with too few options. This was my reality. Dante Moretti's world of black SUVs and bodyguards and scotch that cost more than my rent, that was a fantasy. A dangerous one. I tucked the card into my wallet anyway. Work at the diner started at 6. I showered in lukewarm water, dressed in my uniform, yellow polyester that had been washed so many times it had gone thin at the elbows, and caught the early bus downtown. My knees protested every movement, but I couldn't afford to call in sick. Maria's diner didn't offer sick days, and tips were already slim on weekday mornings. The breakfast rush was brutal. Truckers wanting coffee and eggs, construction workers arguing over the check, a regular who always tried to grab my ass when I refilled his cup. I dodged him with practiced ease, smiled until my face ached, and pretended my feet weren't screaming. By noon, I'd made $43 in tips, barely enough to buy groceries. "Table 6 needs water," Maria called from behind the counter, her accent thick despite 30 years in America. I grabbed a pitcher and headed toward the booth in the corner, then stopped dead. Dante Moretti sat in the cracked vinyl booth, looking completely out of place in his 3-piece suit, one of his guards standing by the door, another positioned near the bathrooms. He held a menu like he was actually considering the meatloaf special, but his eyes were on me. My hands started shaking, water sloshing in the pitcher. What was he doing here? "You going to stand there all day, or are you going to pour the man some water?" Maria's sharp voice cut through my paralysis. I forced my feet to move, approached the table with my heart in my throat. Up close, in the harsh fluorescent lighting of the diner, he was somehow even more devastating than he'd been last night. Dark circles under his eyes suggested he hadn't slept either, but it only made him look more dangerous, more real. "Good morning." My voice came out steadier than I felt. Can I get you something besides water? Coffee. Black. His eyes never left my face. And whatever you recommend for breakfast. The pancakes are good. Hash browns are edible. His mouth quirked. Pancakes, then. I wrote down the order with trembling hands, acutely aware of every customer now staring at us. At him. At his guards who looked like they'd wandered off a movie set. This was a neighborhood diner in a poor part of town. Men in $1,000 suits didn't eat here. I'll have that right out. I turned to leave. Elena. I froze. Turned back slowly. He leaned back in the booth, fingers drumming once on the scarred table. How are your knees? Heat flooded my face. Several customers were definitely listening now, not even pretending otherwise. Fine. Thank you. Good. He paused. You kept the card. It wasn't a question. How did he know? I should get your order in, I managed. His smile was faint, but unmistakable. Of course. I fled to the kitchen, where Maria grabbed my arm immediately. Who is that man? Just someone from the party last night. Just someone? Maria's eyes were sharp. Elena, men like that don't come to places like this for pancakes. Whatever this is, be careful. I nodded, but careful felt impossible when my entire body was humming with awareness. I could feel him watching me through the order window as I moved through my section, refilling coffee, taking orders, wiping down tables. When I brought his pancakes, golden and fluffy, Maria's secret recipe, he was on his phone, speaking quiet Italian. He ended the call as I set the plate down. Anything else? I asked. Sit. I'm working. Sit, Elena. Not a request. A command, delivered in that soft voice that somehow demanded obedience. I glanced at Maria, who nodded reluctantly, slid into the booth across from him, hyper-aware of the vinyl's cracks beneath my thighs, the stickiness of the table. How utterly wrong he looked in this place. He cut into the pancakes with surgical precision, took a bite. His eyebrows rose slightly. These are excellent. Maria's been making them for 30 years. You've worked here long? 2 years. It's my second job. He set down his fork. Second? I waitress at the Regent on weekends, work here during the week. And I pick up catering gigs when I can. Why was I telling him this? Not that it's any of your business. Everything about you is my business now. The possessiveness in his tone sent a shiver down my spine. You can't just claim people. Can I? He took another bite, chewing slowly, watching me with those calculating eyes. You're in debt. Your mother's medical bills alone exceed $200,000. Your apartment building is being sold, and you have less than 2 weeks to find somewhere else to live. You work 80 hours a week and still can't make ends meet. The blood drained from my face. How do you know that? I told you. I make it my business to know things. I couldn't find words. Invasion of privacy seemed too small. That's stalking. That's due diligence. He pushed the plate aside, leaning forward, voice dropping. I'm going to make you an offer, Elena. I suggest you listen carefully. My heart hammered against my ribs. What kind of offer? Marriage. The word hung between us like a bomb waiting to detonate. I laughed. Couldn't help it. The sound came out high and slightly hysterical. You're insane. I'm practical. He didn't smile. I need a wife. You need money. It's a simple business arrangement. Business arrangement? I repeated, incredulous. Marriage is exactly that. A contract, an exchange of assets and benefits. He pulled an envelope from his jacket, set it on the table between us. Open it. My hand shook as I lifted the flap. Inside was a single piece of paper. A check for $500,000. I stopped breathing. That's just the signing bonus, Dante continued, voice calm as if discussing the weather. The actual contract includes full medical coverage for your mother, a penthouse apartment, a monthly allowance, and complete debt forgiveness. In exchange, you'll be my wife for 1 year, public appearances, family events, playing the role when necessary. After 12 months, we divorce quietly, and you walk away with everything. I stared at the check. at more money than I'd see in 10 lifetimes, at the solution to every problem crushing me. "Why?" I whispered. "Why me?" His expression shifted, something dark flickering behind his eyes. "Because I need someone who won't ask questions. Someone who understands this is business, nothing more. Someone who'll play the part and walk away when it's over. But why marriage? Why not just hire someone?" "My grandfather is dying." The words came out flat, emotionless. "He wants to see me married before he goes. Settled. Safe. He thinks a wife will make me legitimate, keep me out of trouble." His mouth twisted. "He's wrong. But I owe him this." I looked at the check again. $500,000. My mother's surgery. A real apartment. Food that wasn't ramen. A future that didn't involve working myself to death. But marrying a stranger? A dangerous man who'd investigated my entire life without permission? Who looked at me like I was a problem to be solved rather than a person. "I can't," I breathed. "You can't afford not to." He leaned back, adjusting his cufflinks with practiced ease. "I'm not asking you to love me, Elena. I'm not even asking you to like me. I'm offering you a way out of the hole you're drowning in. 1 year of pretending, and you're free. What if I say no?" His smile was sharp. "Then you go back to working yourself to death. Lose your apartment. Watch your mother's condition deteriorate because you can't afford her medication. And hope those men from last night don't have friends who remember your face." The threat was implicit, but clear. He could protect me. Or he could withdraw that protection. That's blackmail. That's reality. He stood, dropping cash on the table. Far too much for pancakes and coffee. "You have 24 hours to decide. My number's on the back of the check." He walked out, his guards falling into step behind him, leaving me sitting in the booth with a check for $500,000 burning a hole in my hand. Maria appeared at my elbow. Dios mío. What was that about? I couldn't answer. Couldn't breathe. Couldn't think past the number on that check and the impossible choice it represented. The rest of my shift passed in a fog. I spilled coffee, forgot orders, moved through the motions like a ghost. When my replacement arrived at 3, I caught the bus home in stunned silence. The apartment felt even smaller than usual. The walls pressing in, the ceiling too low, the single window facing a brick wall that blocked out most of the sun. This was my life. This cramped, suffocating box where I counted pennies and rationed meals and prayed nothing else would break because I couldn't afford to fix it. I pulled out my phone, dialed my mother's care facility. "Sunny Meadows, how can I help you?" "This is Elena Russo. I'm calling about my mother, Catherine Russo. 1 moment, please." The hold music was aggressively cheerful. I paced my tiny kitchen, 3 steps in each direction. "Ms. Russo?" The administrator's voice was professionally sympathetic. "I'm glad you called. We need to discuss your mother's account. You're currently 3 months behind on payments and—" "I know. I'm working on it. I understand. But we may need to transition her to the state facility if we can't resolve this soon. She requires specialized care that—" "How much?" I interrupted. "How much to get current and cover the next 6 months?" A pause. "Approximately $68,000. I looked at the check on my counter, at the solution to everything, at the price tag attached to it. "I'll have it by the end of the week," I heard myself say. After I hung up, I sat at my kitchen table and stared at Dante's check until the numbers blurred. 1 year. Just 1 year of pretending to be someone's wife. Someone I didn't know. Someone dangerous. But my mother would get the care she needed. I'd have a roof over my head. Food. Safety. I picked up my phone again, flipped the check over. His number was written in bold, precise handwriting. My finger hovered over the call button. This is insane, I thought. This is the worst idea you've ever had. But what choice did I really have? I pressed call. He answered on the first ring. "I was wondering how long you'd wait. I have conditions," I said, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. "I'm listening. This is business. Nothing more. We have separate bedrooms. You don't touch me unless it's for appearances. And after a year, I walk away clean. No strings, no complications." Agreed. And I want it in writing. A real contract. Legal. My lawyer will have it ready by tomorrow. A pause. Does this mean you're accepting? I closed my eyes, thought of my mother's face, the eviction notice, the endless cycle of poverty I'd been trapped in since birth. Yes, I whispered, I accept. Good. Satisfaction colored his voice. A car will pick you up tomorrow at 6. Bring whatever you want to keep. Everything else will be provided. Tomorrow? Panic spiked through me. That's too fast. We don't have time to waste. The wedding is in 3 days. 3 days? My voice came out strangled. You can't plan a wedding in 3 days. I can plan anything in 3 days. His tone was final. 6 o'clock, Elena. Don't be late. He hung up. I sat in my apartment, phone pressed to my ear, listening to dead air and wondering what I'd just agreed to. The check sat on the table, gleaming like a devil's bargain, because that's exactly what it was. I'd just sold myself to Dante Moretti for the price of my mother's life and my own survival. And God help me, I didn't know if I'd made the best decision of my life or signed my own death warrant. The sun set beyond my brick wall window, shadows creeping across the floor, and I sat in the growing darkness with a check that would change everything, and a fear that whispered I'd just stepped into a cage I'd never escape. Tomorrow, my old life would end. Tomorrow, I'd become Mrs. Dante Moretti. Tomorrow, I'd learn exactly what price I'd really agreed to pay. The black SUV arrived at exactly 6 o'clock. I stood on the sidewalk with 2 garbage bags containing everything I owned. Some clothes, a few photos, my mother's jewelry box, a handful of books I couldn't part with. Pathetic, really. 26 years of life reduced to trash bags. The same guard from the diner, I'd learned his name was Marco, loaded my bags into the trunk without comment. His expression remained neutral, but I caught something that might have been pity flash across his face. Miss Russo, he said, opening the rear door. The interior smelled like leather and expensive cologne. Dante sat in the far seat, typing on his phone, barely glancing up as I climbed in. He wore another impeccable suit, charcoal this time, with a burgundy tie that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe. The door closed. We pulled away from my building, from the only home I'd known for 2 years. I didn't look back. You travel light, Dante observed, still focused on his screen. I don't have much worth keeping. That will change. He finally looked at me, dark eyes scanning my face with that unnerving intensity. You look exhausted. I didn't sleep. Second thoughts? About 1,000 of them. I gripped my purse tighter. But I already cashed your check this morning. Paid my mother's facility through the end of the year. So I guess I'm committed now. His mouth curved slightly. Smart. Securing your interests before the contract is even signed. You said you'd have it ready today. I did. He reached into his briefcase, pulled out a thick document bound in leather. My lawyer worked through the night, read it carefully. Ask questions. Once you sign, the terms are binding. I took the contract with trembling hands. The weight of it felt ominous. Flipped to the first page and started reading. The language was dense, legal jargon that made my head spin, but the key points emerged clearly. 1-year marriage contract, $500,000 signing bonus, already paid. Monthly allowance of $20,000. Penthouse apartment in his building, separate bedroom. Full medical coverage for my mother. All my debts cleared. In exchange, I'd attend all required public events as his wife. Maintain the appearance of a legitimate marriage. Follow security protocols. Keep the arrangement confidential under penalty of lawsuit. And one clause that made my stomach clench. The wife agrees to cohabitate with the husband and present a united front to family members, particularly during visits with the husband's grandfather, Lorenzo Moretti. What does this mean exactly? I pointed to the clause. Present a united front? It means you smile, hold my hand, and convince my grandfather we're in love. His voice was matter of fact. He's traditional. He won't accept anything less than a real marriage. So I have to lie to a dying man. You're being paid very well to lie. No apology in his tone. Is that a problem? I stared at the contract, at the life raft it represented. No problem. We drove in silence while I read through the remaining pages. Terms of divorce after 1 year. Division of assets. I kept everything he'd given me. Non-disclosure agreements, penalty clauses if I violated the terms. It was airtight, cold, transactional. Exactly what he'd promised. There's nothing here about... I paused, choosing words carefully. Physical expectations, because there are none. He set his phone aside, giving me his full attention. I told you. Separate bedrooms. This is business. I won't touch you unless it's necessary for appearances, holding hands, an arm around your waist at events, nothing more. And you expect me to believe you'll be okay with a celibate marriage for a year? His smile was sharp. I didn't say I'd be celibate. I said I wouldn't touch you. He leaned forward slightly. What I do outside our arrangement is my business. As long as you're discreet, what you do is yours. The implication hung heavy between us. An open marriage. Freedom to seek satisfaction elsewhere. It should have been a relief. Instead, something uncomfortable twisted in my chest. I see. I looked back at the contract, unable to meet his eyes. Where do I sign? He produced a pen. Heavy, expensive, probably worth more than my old rent. Handed it to me. I signed on the designated lines, my signature looking childish next to his bold scrawl. With each stroke of the pen, I felt the cage door closing. Congratulations, Elena. He took the contract back, tucking it into his briefcase. In 3 days, you'll be Mrs. Moretti. The SUV turned into an underground parking garage, descending past numbered levels until we reached what must have been private parking. Only 3 cars here, a sleek sports car that looked like it belonged in a museum, another SUV identical to this one, and a motorcycle that gleamed under the fluorescent lights. This is home, Dante said as we exited the vehicle. A private elevator required a key card. We rode up in silence, my reflection in the polished doors, showing a pale, terrified woman standing next to a man who looked carved from marble. The elevator opened directly into the penthouse. I stepped out and forgot to breathe. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city skyline. The space was massive, all clean lines, modern furniture, and art that probably cost more than most people's houses. Kitchen with marble countertops and appliances I'd only seen in magazines. Living area that could fit my old apartment 3 times over. Your room is this way. Dante led me down a hallway, Marco following with my pathetic garbage bags. He opened a door to a bedroom that made me want to cry. King-sized bed with crisp white linens. Ensuite, bathroom with a soaking tub. Walk-in closet currently empty except for my 2 bags looking lost in the corner. The closet will be filled by tomorrow, Dante said. A stylist will come in the morning to take your measurements. You'll need appropriate clothing for the wedding and subsequent events. I can buy my own clothes. The words came out defensive. Not the kind you'll need. His tone wasn't cruel, just factual. The people will be around judge everything. Shoes, jewelry, how your dress fits. I won't have my wife looking, he trailed off. Poor, I finished bitterly. Out of place? I was going to say uncomfortable. He moved toward the door. But yes, in this world, appearance is everything. You need to look like you belong. I'll never belong in your world. He paused in the doorway, looking back at me with an expression I couldn't read. No, you won't, but you'll learn to pretend convincingly. That's all that matters. He left, closing the door behind him. I stood in the center of my golden cage, surrounded by luxury I'd never dreamed of, and felt more trapped than I ever had in my cramped studio. That night, I soaked in the enormous bathtub until my skin pruned, trying to wash away the feeling that I'd made a terrible mistake. The water was hot enough to hurt, but I welcomed the pain. It felt real. Everything else felt like a dream. Or a nightmare. The next morning, I woke to knocking. Stumbled to the door in the silk pajamas I'd found laid out on the bed, another gift I hadn't asked for, and found a woman with severe black hair and measuring tape draped around her neck. Elena Russo? Her accent was French, crisp. I'm Vivian. I'll be dressing you for the wedding and subsequent events. She swept into the room without waiting for invitation, followed by 2 assistants carrying garment bags and boxes. For the next 3 hours, I was measured, dressed, undressed, and dressed again in an endless parade of fabric and style. Vivienne circled me like a predator, adjusting seams, tutting at my posture, making notes in rapid French. You have good bones, she finally declared. The malnutrition has made you too thin, but we can work with it. For the wedding, I'm thinking Valentino. Simple, elegant, white, but not virginal. Mr. Moretti was specific about that. Heat flooded my face. He told you this isn't a real marriage? Mr. Moretti tells me what he needs me to know. She held up a swatch of ivory silk. And I don't ask questions. I suggest you learn the same. By noon, my closet had been transformed. Dresses, suits, shoes, jewelry, everything coordinated, everything perfect, everything designed to turn me into someone I wasn't. I stood in front of the full-length mirror in a fitted black dress Vivienne insisted was essential for dinners, and barely recognized myself. The dress hugged curves I'd forgotten I had. The fabric expensive enough that it felt like butter against my skin. Better, Vivienne said with satisfaction. You'll do. After she left, I explored the penthouse. Dante was gone. Marco mentioned something about business, so I had the space to myself. His bedroom door was closed, and I didn't dare open it, some boundaries I wasn't ready to cross. The kitchen was fully stocked with food I'd only ever seen in cooking shows. I made myself a sandwich, feeling guilty for using the expensive bread, then ate it standing by the windows, watching the city sprawl below. From up here, everything looked small, manageable. The problems that had crushed me felt distant, like they belonged to someone else. Maybe they did now. Maybe Elena Russo, the waitress who worked 2 jobs and couldn't pay her bills, had died the moment I signed that contract. The thought should have been liberating. Instead, it felt like grief. Dante returned that evening while I was curled on the couch, trying to read one of the books from the built-in shelves. I heard the elevator, the quiet conversation with Marco, then his footsteps approaching. He'd loosened his tie, top button undone, looking more human than I'd seen him. Almost vulnerable, if someone like him could be vulnerable. How was your day? He asked, pouring himself scotch from the bar. Surreal. Your stylist is terrifying. Vivienne is the best. He took a sip, studying me. She didn't upset you, did she? No more than this entire situation already has. He moved to the chair across from me, settling into it with that controlled grace. You'll adjust. Will I? I closed the book. Will I adjust to living in a stranger's apartment, pretending to be his wife, lying to everyone about what this really is? You'll adjust because you're smart and adaptable. He swirled the scotch in his glass, and because the alternative is much worse. That's not comforting. I'm not here to comfort you, but something in his expression softened slightly. I'm here to offer you a business arrangement. You accepted. Now we both fulfill our ends of the bargain. And after a year, what happens to me then? You disappear with your money and your freedom. Start over somewhere new. Live the life you've always wanted. He stood, finishing his drink. Isn't that what you signed up for? I signed up for survival. There's a difference. He paused by my chair, looking down at me with those dark, unreadable eyes. In my world, Elena, survival is the only thing that matters. Everything else is luxury. He left me alone with my book and my thoughts. That night, lying in my enormous bed, I heard him moving around in his room. The muffled sound of his voice on the phone, speaking Italian, water running in his bathroom, then silence. I stared at the ceiling, counting the hours until I'd become his wife. 72 hours had become 48, then 24. The wedding day arrived with merciless speed. I woke to Vivienne and her team invading my room at dawn. Hair, makeup, dress. I was transformed piece by piece into someone worthy of standing beside Dante Moretti. The wedding dress was stunning, simple ivory silk that fell like water, elegant without being ostentatious. Beautiful, Vivienne declared, stepping back to admire her work. I looked in the mirror and saw a stranger. Someone polished and perfect and utterly false. The wedding was small, just immediate family, Dante had said. His grandfather Lorenzo, a handful of cousins, his mother, no friends, no one who knew the truth. We married in the penthouse, a judge officiating, afternoon sun streaming through the windows. I spoke my vows in a voice that didn't shake, slipped the ring onto Dante's finger with steady hands, and let him kiss me for the first time. His lips were soft, the kiss chaste and brief, meant for the audience of his family. But even that brief contact sent electricity through me that I absolutely could not afford to feel. When he pulled back, his eyes held mine for a fraction too long. Something flickered there. Surprise, maybe, or recognition of the same unwanted spark. Then it was gone, and he turned to accept congratulations from his grandfather. Lorenzo Moretti was exactly as I'd imagined. Elderly, sharp-eyed despite his illness, watching me with open calculation. When he took my hand, his grip was surprisingly strong. "Welcome to the family, Elena." His English was thickly accented. "My grandson has made a good choice," I smiled, playing the role. "Thank you, I'm honored to be part of it. You'll make him happy, yes? Keep him safe?" The weight of his expectation pressed down on me. This was why Dante needed me, to ease this man's worry, to give him peace before he died. "I'll do my best," I promised, and felt the lie settle into my bones. The reception was elegant and brief. Champagne I couldn't taste, food I couldn't eat, conversation I barely followed. Dante stayed close, hand at the small of my back, playing the attentive husband with practiced ease. "You're doing well," he murmured during a lull, lips close to my ear. "My mother is convinced we're in love. I'm a good actress when I need to be. I'm counting on it." His hand tightened slightly on my waist, possessive. "We have one more performance tonight. Family dinner at my grandfather's estate, then you're free until the next event." Free, the word tasted bitter. "In my golden cage, better than your old one," he countered. He wasn't wrong. The dinner was endless. Lorenzo's estate was massive, old money dripping from every surface. The dining room table could seat 20, crystal chandeliers overhead, paintings that probably belonged in museums. I sat beside Dante, his wife now legally and publicly, and played my part. Laughed at appropriate moments, answered questions about our courtship, with the story we'd rehearsed, accepted congratulations from cousins whose names I'd already forgotten. Dante's hand found mine under the table, lacing our fingers together. For show, I told myself, just for show. But his thumb traced circles on my palm, and I couldn't tell if he was even aware he was doing it. When we finally left, it was past midnight. I collapsed into the SUV, exhausted in ways I'd never been. "You did well tonight," Dante said as we drove home. Home. When had I started thinking of his penthouse as home? I survived it. That's all that's required. He loosened his tie, looking as tired as I felt. "The hard part is over. From here, it's just maintaining appearances." "Just?" I laughed, brittle. "I just married a man I don't know, lied to his dying grandfather, pretended to be in love for an audience who'll judge my every move. Nothing about this is just anything." He looked at me then, really looked, and for the first time I saw something crack in his controlled facade. "I know this isn't what you wanted, Elena. I know I'm asking you to sacrifice more than money can repay, but I needed this. My grandfather needed this, and you needed survival." I finished quietly. "I know." We rode the rest of the way in silence. Back at the penthouse, I retreated to my room immediately, desperate to shed the dress, the makeup, the performance. But my hands fumbled with the hidden zipper, exhaustion and stress making me clumsy. A knock on my door. "Elena?" I opened it to find Dante still in his tuxedo pants and unbuttoned shirt, looking disheveled and somehow more dangerous for it. "I can't get the zipper," I admitted, too tired for pride. He stepped into my room without asking permission, moving behind me. His fingers found the zipper, sliding it down with agonizing slowness. The silk parted, revealing my bare back, and I felt his breath catch, the air between us charged with something I didn't want to name. "There," he said, voice rougher than usual, but he didn't step back. His hand lingered at the small of my back, skin on skin, burning. I should have moved away, should have thanked him and closed the door. Instead, I turned to face him. We stood too close in my bedroom, his shirt open, my dress falling off my shoulders, the intimacy of it overwhelming despite the business arrangement between us. "Dante, this doesn't change anything," he said quickly. "The contract stands. Separate rooms. No complications." "Right, no complications. but neither of us moved. His eyes dropped to my lips, and I saw the war playing across his face. Want versus control. Desire versus the terms we'd agreed to. Control won. It always would with him. He stepped back, breaking the spell. "Good night, Elena." "Good night." He left, closing the door softly behind him. I stood alone in my wedding dress, half undone, feeling the ghost of his touch on my skin. We'd been married less than 12 hours, and already the lines we'd drawn were blurring. This was supposed to be simple, a business arrangement. 1 year, and done, but nothing about Dante Moretti was simple. And I was beginning to realize I'd underestimated the cost of this bargain. The dress pooled at my feet, silk and lace and lies, and I wondered how I'd survive a year of this without losing myself completely. 3 weeks into the marriage, I learned that Dante Moretti didn't sleep. Or if he did, it was in fragments I never witnessed. I'd wake at 2 a.m. to hear him on the phone in his office, speaking rapid Italian. At dawn, I'd find him in the gym that occupied half of the lower level, pounding a heavy bag with wrapped fists until sweat soaked through his shirt. He was always controlled, always contained, but in those early morning hours, I caught glimpses of something underneath, a restlessness that matched my own. We'd settled into a strange routine. Breakfast together when his schedule allowed, careful conversation about nothing important. He'd leave for meetings I wasn't privy to, guarded by Marco and his team. I'd spend my days in the penthouse, reading, calling my mother's facility, trying to fill the empty hours. At night, we'd have dinner together. Sometimes in comfortable silence, sometimes with halting attempts at getting to know each other that never went deeper than surface details. It was polite, civil, exactly what we'd agreed to, and it was driving me slowly insane. "There's an event tonight," Dante announced over breakfast on a Thursday morning. "Charity gala. We need to make an appearance." I set down my coffee. "How long?" 2 hours, 3 at most." He scrolled through his phone, not looking at me. "Vivian left a dress in your closet. The car leaves at 7. "Okay." He glanced up then, something flickering across his face. "You don't ask questions anymore. Would it matter if I did?" "Probably not." But he set his phone aside, giving me his full attention. "Does that bother you?" I considered lying, decided on truth. "Everything about this bothers me, but I signed a contract. I'll fulfill my end." His jaw tightened. "You don't have to sound like a prisoner, don't I?" The words came out sharper than intended. "I live in a beautiful cage, Dante. The bars are just harder to see." Before he could respond, his phone rang. He glanced at the screen, and whatever he saw there made his expression harden. "I have to take this." He stood, already moving toward his office. 7 o'clock, Elena. Don't be late." The door closed behind him with quiet finality. I sat alone in the pristine kitchen, surrounded by luxury I'd never wanted, and felt the walls closing in. The gala was exactly as I'd expected. Glittering people in expensive clothes, champagne flowing like water, orchestra playing something classical while couples danced. We arrived fashionably late, Dante's hand firm at my back as we navigated the crowd. I wore the dress Vivian had chosen, emerald silk that made my skin glow and my eyes look greener, diamonds at my throat, on loan, Dante had said, and heels that made me tall enough to almost meet his eyes. We looked perfect together. The cameras certainly thought so, flashing as we posed at the entrance. "Smile," Dante murmured against my ear. "You're supposed to be happy." I smiled until my face hurt. Inside, we were immediately swarmed, business associates wanting to congratulate Dante on his marriage. Women who air-kissed my cheeks while their eyes catalogued every detail of my appearance. Men who shook Dante's hand while their gazes lingered on me too long. Dante noticed. His hand tightened on my waist, pulling me closer. A clear signal of ownership. "Quite the trophy you've acquired, Moretti," one silver-haired man said with an oily smile. "My wife," Dante corrected, voice dropping to something dangerous, "is not a trophy." The man paled and excused himself quickly. I should have been grateful for the defense. Instead, I felt like an object they were arguing over ownership of. "I need air," I whispered. Dante studied my face, seeing something there that made him nod. "The terrace. 5 minutes." I escaped through the French doors onto a stone terrace overlooking manicured gardens. The night air was cool, carrying the scent of jasmine and money. I gripped the railing, breathing deeply, trying to remember why I'd agreed to this. $500,000, my mother's care, survival. Worth it. It had to be worth it. Beautiful night. The voice came from behind me, masculine, smooth, unfamiliar. I turned to find a man in his 40s, expensive suit, smile that didn't reach his eyes. Yes, it is. I moved to go back inside. He stepped into my path. We haven't been introduced. Marcus Delacroix. He extended his hand. I didn't take it. Elena Moretti. Ah, yes. The new Mrs. Moretti. His gaze traveled over me, assessing. Dante certainly has excellent taste. Though I have to wonder what a woman like you sees in a man like him. Warning bells rang in my head. Excuse me? Come now. We both know what he is, what he does. Marcus moved closer, and I caught the smell of expensive whiskey on his breath. A beautiful woman like you, married to someone with that much blood on his hands, must be quite the financial arrangement. My heart pounded. I don't know what you're talking about. No? His smile sharpened. Then you're either very naive or very well paid. I'm guessing the latter. He reached out, fingers brushing my bare arm. If you ever get tired of playing house with a monster, I could offer you something better, something real. I jerked away, but he grabbed my wrist, gripped tight enough to hurt. Let go. Not until we've finished our conversation. The hand on my wrist disappeared, as Marcus was suddenly slammed against the stone railing hard enough that I heard the air leave his lungs. Dante had him by the throat, eyes black with fury, every line of his body radiating lethal intent. Touch her again, Dante said softly, and I'll break every bone in your hand before I throw you off this terrace. Marcus's face turned purple. I was just talking. You were touching my wife. The emphasis on the last word was pure possession. Without her permission, that's the last mistake you'll make tonight. He released Marcus, who stumbled away, gasping. Marco appeared from nowhere, he and another guard flanking Marcus. Sir, escort Mr. Delacroix out. Make sure he understands he's not welcome at any events I attend. Dante's voice was ice. Ever. They dragged Marcus away, his protests fading as they disappeared into the garden. Dante turned to me, fury still etched across his features. Did he hurt you? I rubbed my wrist where Marcus had grabbed me. I'm fine. Let me see. He took my hand gently, examining my wrist. A red mark was already forming, his jaw clenched. I should have broken his hand. You threatened to throw him off a terrace. I still might. He released my hand slowly. No one touches you. No one threatens you. I don't care who they are or what business we have with them. You're mine to protect. The possessiveness in his voice should have scared me. Instead, heat flooded through me. I'm not actually yours, I reminded him quietly. This is just a contract. I know. But his eyes said something different. Doesn't change the fact that while you wear my ring, you're under my protection. That means something in my world. What does it mean? He stepped closer, and I could smell his cologne, feel the heat of him. It means anyone who hurts you answers to me. It means you're safe, Elena, always. We stood too close on the terrace, his words hanging between us like a promise, or a threat. I couldn't tell which. We should go back inside, I managed. No. He pulled out his phone, texted something. We're leaving. I'm done with this circus. But you said... I don't care what I said. He took my hand, lacing our fingers together. You're shaking. We're going home. The drive back was silent. Dante still held my hand, thumb tracing patterns on my palm like he had at the wedding. I didn't pull away. Couldn't bring myself to break the contact. At the penthouse, he walked me to my bedroom door. Thank you, I said quietly. For tonight. For defending me. His expression softened fractionally. You don't have to thank me for that. Still, I searched for words. It felt real, for a moment. Something flickered in his eyes. Elena. Whatever he was going to say died as his phone rang. He glanced at it, and I saw his entire body tense. I have to take this, but he hesitated. looking at me like he wanted to say something else. "Get some rest. We'll talk tomorrow." He answered the call, already walking toward his office, voice dropping into Italian. I went into my room and closed the door, leaning against it. My wrist still tingled where Marcus had grabbed me. But more than that, I could still feel Dante's hand in mine, the way he'd defended me without hesitation. The fury in his eyes when he'd seen someone hurting me. You're mine to protect. This was supposed to be business, a transaction, nothing more. But the way Dante had looked at Marcus, like he'd kill him for touching me, that wasn't business. And the way my heart had raced when Dante held my hand, when he called me his wife with such conviction, that wasn't professional distance. The lines were blurring, had been blurring since the moment I signed that contract. I changed into pajamas and climbed into bed, but sleep wouldn't come. Through the walls, I could hear Dante's voice, sharp and angry, an argument in Italian that went on for over an hour. When silence finally fell, I heard his footsteps in the hallway. They paused outside my door. I held my breath, waiting. The footsteps moved on. His door closed. I released the breath I'd been holding and stared at the ceiling, counting the days until this arrangement ended. 297 days left. It felt like both forever, and not nearly enough time. The shift happened gradually, then all at once. 2 months into our marriage, Dante started coming home earlier. Started asking about my day like he genuinely cared about the answer. Started leaving his office door open while he worked. A silent invitation I was too afraid to accept. 3 months in, he insisted I join him for breakfast every morning. No phones, no distractions. Just coffee and conversation that had started feeling less like obligation and more like something else. 4 months in, I realized I was in trouble. It was a Thursday evening. Dante had been gone for 3 days on business he wouldn't discuss, protected by Marco and a team of men I'd learned not to ask about. I'd spent those days rattling around the penthouse, hating how empty it felt without him. When the elevator opened and he walked in, exhausted and rumpled in a way I'd never seen, relief flooded through me so intensely it scared me. "You're back," I said from the couch, trying to sound casual. He stopped, taking me in like he'd forgotten what I looked like. "I'm back. There's leftovers in the kitchen. I made pasta. I'd been cooking more lately, needing something to do with my hands. If you're hungry." Something softened in his expression. "You cooked for me?" "I cooked because I was bored. You can have some if you want." But we both knew that was a lie. He disappeared into his room to change. When he emerged in sweatpants and a t-shirt, the most casual I'd ever seen him, he headed straight for the kitchen. I followed, watching as he heated the pasta and ate standing at the counter. "It's good," he said after the first bite. "Really good. My mother's recipe." I leaned against the doorframe. "She used to make it every Sunday. How is she?" "Better. The new medication is helping. Thanks to him," I didn't add. Thanks to money I'd never have had without this arrangement. He finished eating, rinsed his plate, then turned to face me. "I missed this. Pasta. Home." The word hung between us, weighted with meaning. "I missed coming home." My heart stuttered. "Dante, I know what you're going to say." He moved closer and I couldn't make myself step back. "This is just business. A contract. 1 year and done. I know the rules, Elena. I wrote them. Then why does it feel like we're breaking them?" "Because we are." He reached up, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear. The gesture was so gentle, so intimate, that my breath caught. "I'm breaking them. Every day. Every time I come home and hope you'll be here. Every time I catch myself thinking about you during meetings. Every time someone looks at you and I want to..." He cut himself off, jaw clenching. "Want to what?" I whispered. "Hurt them. For daring to look at what's mine." His hand cupped my face, thumb brushing my cheekbone. "And before you remind me again that you're not actually mine, I know this isn't real, but God help me, Elena, it's starting to feel real. I should have pulled away. Should have reminded him of the contract, the arrangement, the inevitable end. Instead, I leaned into his touch. "I'm scared," I admitted. "Of me?" "Of this. Of forgetting it's temporary." I forced myself to meet his eyes. "Of what happens when the year ends and I have to walk away from From what? From you, I didn't say, couldn't say. Because saying it out loud would make it true, and I wasn't ready for that truth. His phone buzzed, shattering the moment. He glanced at it, and whatever he saw there made his expression shudder. I have to go out, he said, stepping back. The distance between us suddenly felt like miles. Don't wait up. He was gone before I could respond. Marco and 2 guards materializing from wherever they waited, the elevator doors closing on whatever moment we'd almost had. I stood alone in the kitchen, touching my face where his hand had been, and wondered when I'd stop pretending this was just business. The truth was, I'd been lying to myself for months. I was falling for my husband, my temporary, contracted business arrangement husband, and I had no idea what to do about it. The call came at 3 a.m. I jerked awake to my phone buzzing insistently on the nightstand. Unknown number. My heart lurched. Calls at 3 a.m. were never good news. Hello? Mrs. Moretti? The voice was professional, female, urgent. This is Mercy General Hospital. Your husband was brought in 20 minutes ago. You should come immediately. The world tilted. What happened? Is he... The doctor will explain when you arrive. 5th floor, trauma unit. She hung up. I was out of bed and dressed in seconds, my hands shaking so badly I could barely tie my shoes. Marco met me at the elevator. He must have been called too, his face grim. What happened? I demanded. Ambush. 3 cars. 12 men. His voice was flat, professional. Mr. Moretti took 2 bullets. He's in surgery. The words didn't make sense, couldn't make sense. Dante with his control and his guards and his careful planning. How could someone hurt him? Who? The word came out broken. We're handling it. The hospital was stark white and antiseptic. A nurse directed us to a private waiting room where Dante's mother already sat, rosary clutched in trembling hands. She looked up when I entered, face streaked with tears. Elena. She stood, pulling me into an embrace I hadn't expected. Thank God you're here. He kept asking for you. Before they took him to surgery, he kept saying your name. Something cracked in my chest. I sat beside her, holding her hand, watching the clock tick away minutes that felt like hours. Marco stood by the door, phone pressed to his ear, orchestrating whatever response Dante's organization was mounting. Lorenzo arrived with 2 of Dante's cousins. More family materialized. They filled the waiting room with quiet conversation and prayers, a reminder that beneath the danger and the darkness, these people loved him, and so did I. The realization hit like a physical blow. I loved him. Not the careful, guarded version he showed the world. Not the business arrangement or the contract or the protection he offered. I loved the man who came home exhausted and ate my pasta, who defended me without hesitation, who looked at me like I was something precious, even while reminding us both it was temporary. I loved Dante Moretti, and he might die without knowing. The surgeon emerged 4 hours later, still in scrubs, exhaustion evident in every line of his body. He's stable, he announced, and the room released a collective breath. 1 bullet missed major arteries. The other did some damage to his shoulder, but we repaired it. He'll need physical therapy, and recovery will take time, but he should make a full recovery. Can I see him? I asked before anyone else could. The surgeon nodded. He's in ICU, family only, 2 at a time. Dante's mother looked at me, reading something in my face. You go first, Elena. He'd want that. The ICU was quiet, except for the beeping of monitors. A nurse led me to his room, warned me about the tubes and machines, then left me alone with him. He looked smaller in the hospital bed, vulnerable in a way I'd never seen. His chest was bandaged, arms bruised from IVs, face pale beneath his tan, but he was breathing. Alive. I pulled a chair close, taking his hand carefully, mindful of the IV. You idiot, I whispered. You absolute idiot. You're supposed to be untouchable. You're supposed to be safe. His fingers twitched in mine. I know you probably can't hear me, but I need to say this. I pressed my forehead against our joined hands. I love you. I know I'm not supposed to. I know this violates every term of our agreement, but I love you, Dante Moretti. And you better wake up so I can tell you properly, so I can fight about it. so we can figure out what the hell we're going to do about this mess we've made. Elena. His voice was hoarse, barely audible. My head snapped up. His eyes were open, cloudy with pain medication but focused on me. You're awake. Oh God, you're awake. Tears spilled down my cheeks. Don't ever do that again. Do you hear me? Don't ever. You love me, he interrupted, the corner of his mouth lifting slightly. That's what you focus on? You just got shot twice. You love me, he repeated, wonder in his voice. His hand tightened on mine. Say it again. I love you, you impossible man. I was crying and laughing and furious all at once. And you better love me back because I've wasted 4 months pretending I didn't feel this way. And if this is one-sided, I'm going to— He pulled me down with surprising strength, kissing me through the pain medication and the tears and the machines, not the chaste kiss from our wedding. This was real, desperate, full of everything we'd been holding back. When we broke apart, he pressed his forehead to mine. I fell in love with you the night you spilled champagne on your tray because I made you nervous. Everything since then has been me trying to convince myself it was just business. We're terrible at business then, the worst. He kissed me again, softer this time. The contract. Burn it. I don't care about the money or the apartment or any of it. I just want you. The real you, not the arrangement. Elena. My name was a prayer on his lips. I'm not an easy man to love. My world is dangerous. People will always be trying to hurt me. Which means they'll try to hurt you. Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything. I cupped his face, careful of his injuries. We'll figure it out together. The danger, the complications, all of it. As long as you promise me this is real now. No more contracts, no more pretending, no more pretending, he agreed. Just you and me, for however long you'll have me. That's going to be a very long time. I kissed him again, tasting salt from my tears. You're stuck with me now, Mr. Moretti. Best contract I ever signed. Recovery took months. Dante was a terrible patient, impatient with physical therapy, frustrated by his limitations, pushing himself too hard too fast. I learned to be stern with him, to hide his work phone when he needed rest, to threaten him with his mother when he wouldn't listen to doctors. We also learned each other, really learned each other, without the walls we'd built. He told me about his childhood, about losing his father young, about the weight of the family business he'd inherited. I told him about my mother's illness, about the poverty that had shaped me, about dreams I'd given up before I met him. We fought. Passionate, fierce arguments about his protection detail, my stubborn independence, the balance between his dangerous world and my need for normalcy. But we always came back together, learning that loving each other meant accepting all the complicated, messy parts. Lorenzo passed away 6 months into our marriage, peacefully in his sleep. At the funeral, surrounded by family, Dante held my hand and whispered, "He died happy. Because of you. Because he thought I'd found love." He wasn't wrong, I whispered back. No, he wasn't. The 1-year mark came and went without mention. We burned the contract in the fireplace one night, watching the paper curl and blacken, the terms that had brought us together turning to ash. What now? I asked, curled against his side on the couch. Now we start over, a real marriage, real vows. He tilted my face up. Marry me again, Elena, not for business or contracts or convenience. Marry me because you love me, because I love you, because I can't imagine my life without you. We're already married. Not really. Not in any way that counts. He pulled out a ring, not the one from our contract wedding, but something new, a single diamond, simple and perfect. Marry me for real this time. Say yes because you want forever, not just a year. I looked at the ring, at his face, at the future stretching ahead of us, complicated and dangerous and beautiful. Yes, I said. Yes to forever. Yes to real. Yes to all of it. He slid the ring onto my finger, and this time, when he kissed me, it tasted like promises we'd actually keep. We married again 3 months later. Small ceremony, just close family, in the garden of Lorenzo's estate. I wore white, virginal this time, Vivian had said with a knowing smile. And Dante couldn't stop staring at me like I was something miraculous. When we said our vows, there were no lies, no performance. Just two people who'd found each other in the strangest way possible and decided to choose each other every day after. "I love you," he said when the priest pronounced us married. "My wife, my Elena. Mine. Yours," I agreed, "and you're mine. Forever." "Forever," he promised. And this time we both knew it was real. The contract had brought us together, but love, messy, complicated, impossible love, that's what made us stay. Years later, standing in the same penthouse where our arrangement had begun, I'd sometimes pull out the old contract from the safe where Dante had saved it, a reminder of where we'd started. "Regretting it yet?" he'd ask, wrapping his arms around me from behind. "Never," I'd say, turning in his embrace. "Best business decision I ever made. Worst contract I ever wrote. Best husband I ever had. I'm your only husband. Exactly." And he'd kiss me like he had that first time in the hospital, desperate and real and full of forever. Our story started with a lie, a business arrangement, a contract meant to last 1 year and end cleanly. But some lies become truth, some arrangements become forever. And some contracts lead to the kind of love that rewrites all the rules. We'd found our ending, or rather, our beginning, and it was real. Finally. Wonderfully,